The new Realme X2 features a Snapdragon 730G processor and 4 rear cameras, and also happens to compete with the Redmi Note 8 Pro from Xiaomi. Now this phone also has some powerful internals as well as quad rear cameras, but starts at a price lower than the Realme X2. So which phone do you put your money on? Well, we do a head-to-head comparison between the Realme X2 and the Redmi Note 8 Pro to find out. Now before we go ahead, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that bell icon so you're the first to know when we have a new video. The Realme X2 has no major changes in design compared to the very similar Realme XT. In terms of size, the Redmi Note 8 Pro is bigger and bulkier than the X2. Both these phones offer premium build quality with Corning Gorilla Glass at the front and the back. The Realme X2's AMOLED display measures 6.4 inches, while the Redmi Note 8 Pro has a bigger one at 6.53 inches, but it's an HDR LCD panel. We prefer the button placement on the Realme X2 compared to the Redmi Note 8 Pro. The Note 8 Pro has a capacitive fingerprint scanner mounted at the back, whereas the X2 sports an in-display one. Both these phones have USB Type-C ports at the bottom, along with their primary microphones, 3.5mm headphone jacks and loudspeakers. The Redmi Note 8 Pro has an IR emitter on the top, which the Realme X2 lacks. Both smartphones also have dedicated microSD card slots for storage expansion. Overall, we feel it's the Realme X2 that wins in terms of design thanks to the better button positioning, the in-display fingerprint sensor, and just the overall look and feel. The Realme X2 is powered by Qualcomm Snapdragon 730G SoC, while the Redmi Note 8 Pro has the MediaTek Helio G90T. Now, Xiaomi offers 6GB of RAM with the base variant of the Redmi Note 8 Pro, while the entry-level X2 has 4GB of RAM, and that too at a higher starting price. The Realme X2 is available in 3 variants: 4GB of RAM with 64GB of storage, 6GB of RAM with 128GB of storage, and 8GB of RAM with 128GB of storage. The Redmi Note 8 Pro, on the other hand, offers 6GB of RAM with 64GB of storage, 6GB of RAM and 128GB of storage, and finally 8GB of RAM and 128GB of storage. Both smartphones run Android 9 Pie with their custom UIs on top. The Redmi Note 8 Pro runs on MIUI 11 now, while the Realme X2 gets ColorOS 6.1, which we also first saw on the X2 Pro. We prefer ColorOS because it was less intrusive in terms of notification spam. We had the 8GB RAM variants of both phones to test. Now, when using the two side by side, we prefer the display of the Realme X2, which exhibited better blacks and punchier colors. We found that both devices are capable of delivering smooth user experiences without any lag or stutter. Now, neither of these devices had any issues with multitasking either. Playing PUBG Mobile on both phones was a breeze, as both defaulted to the game's high graphics preset. We did not notice any stutter or lag on either device. Now, after playing PUBG Mobile for about 30 minutes, we did find that the Redmi Note 8 Pro was slightly warmer than the Realme X2, but the difference wasn't huge. Battery life varies a lot between these two phones. The X2 has a smaller battery at 4000 mAh, while the Redmi Note 8 Pro has a bigger 4500 mAh battery. Now, in our HD video loop test, the Redmi Note 8 Pro lasted for 14 hours, while the X2 could still manage about 13 hours and 11 minutes. However, the smaller battery along with the more powerful 30-watt bundle fast charger helps the X2 charge a lot quicker than the Note 8 Pro. It got to 60% in 30 minutes, while the Note 8 Pro could only get to about 32% in the same amount of time with its 18-watt charger. With our usage, both smartphones easily lasted about a day and a half. Now, these two smartphones have identical quad camera setups consisting of a 64-megapixel primary camera, an 8-megapixel wide-angle camera, a 2-megapixel macro camera, and a 2-megapixel depth sensor. For selfies, the Realme X2 has a 32-megapixel front camera, while the Note 8 Pro packs in a 20-megapixel one. In daylight, the Realme X2 manages to meter light better and sets the exposure right a lot more quickly, whereas we observe the Redmi Note 8 Pro overexposing background slightly. The wide-angle cameras on both smartphones let you capture a wider field of view, but there is noticeable distortion at the edges in the output. The Note 8 Pro sharpens photos here as well, which we didn't quite like. The Redmi Note 8 Pro did not immediately focus when we wanted to in close-ups. However, the Realme X2 was a lot quicker in this respect and managed better shots. For portraits, both phones managed good enough edge detection, but the Realme X2 had a slightly inaccurate color tone. For macro shots, we prefer the Redmi Note 8 Pro as it managed better details. In low light, we noticed that shots taken with the Redmi Note 8 Pro had visible grain, whereas the X2 managed to keep it more under control. Photos shot with night mode on each phone were brighter and had better detail, but here too the X2 had slightly warmer color tone. Selfies taken with the Realme X2 were better than those from the Redmi Note 8 Pro, which sharpened them excessively, crushing the blacks. Video recording topped out at 4K for both these smartphones. Now, footage shot at 1080p was stabilized and we liked the output of the Realme X2, although we must note that the Redmi Note 8 Pro did a better job of capturing audio. 4K video wasn't stabilized on either device and both managed to produce a very similar output. In low light, the X2 had the better quality as it could keep noise under control and stabilize video better than the Redmi Note 8 Pro. Both the Realme X2 and the Redmi Note 8 Pro pack powerful hardware that lets them tackle anything you throw at them. Battery life is good for both too, but the Realme X2 has a slight edge thanks to its faster charger. Now, while both smartphones have nearly identical rear camera configurations, the output wasn't always the same. The Redmi Note 8 Pro went a little overboard with the sharpening in daylight, whereas the Realme X2 had a slightly warmer color tone overall. Now, in terms of camera performance at least, it's not very easy to declare an exact winner. If you are on a tight budget, then the Redmi Note 8 Pro offers better bang for buck thanks to the lower starting price and also the higher amount of RAM for the base variant. However, if you are willing to pay that extra premium, then the Realme X2 is worth that additional money. So thanks for watching our comparison, and for all things tech, log on to Gadgets360.com.